What you gonna do, brother, when classic wrestlers run wild on you?
Say your prayers, eat your vitamins. WWE Legends of WrestleMania is here. If you remember when the WWE was the WWF, this game is for you. In Legends of WrestleMania, you'll find yourself playing as a classic grappler in classic matches and recreating some wrestling history as you go along. Now let's start with the WrestleMania Tour mode. You're given matches to relive, rewrite, and redefine. In each mode, the player's treated to a highlight reel before the match. It gives you all the backstory leading up to the big pay-per-view match, and then it shows a few clips from the actual match. This is pretty cool. It's a lot like when you're watching a WWE pay-per-view, or sometimes even, you know, the main event on the cable show. They'll show a little backstory before the match, and that's a lot like what you get before you play through each match in the relive mode. Also, you get that in the rewrite and the redefine mode, but the difference here, in rewrite, you're trying to alter the ending of the match, so you want to play as the person who actually lost the match and try and win it for them, have them walk out of WrestleMania the new champ. So there's that, and then there's the redefine mode, which takes a classic match and it throws in a cage or some ladders or some other random things like that, and lets you rewrite a little bit of wrestling history. One of the things I really enjoyed about this game was the character models, but I have to note that they're not 100% accurate. You'll notice Jake the Snake Roberts was never quite as buff as he is in this game. Still a legend, but never known for his buffness. He was more just known for being a good wrestler. And then Hulk Hogan has some extra hair, and I know some of you are going to say, well, he had more hair back then, and he did. He didn't have quite as much hair as they gave him in this game. All of the entrances coming to the ring are perfectly emulated. It's really great to see some of these classic wrestlers who may have never even appeared in a video game before, and some of these guys have been in video games, but they've not been done the justice that they've been done until now. Even the on-screen graphics, as you can see here, as they're coming to the ring where it shows their name and everything, looks just like its original broadcast counterpart. And there's even some lighting effects on the lens of the camera that kind of gives it this glowing, kind of soft look. It gives it more of the 80s broadcast look on some of those matches. And it's just it's a small detail, but it really made a difference in making it feel like you're in a time machine playing some of these old matches. The roster is solid, but it's also small. After just a few matches, you'll be asking yourself questions like, hey, where's the Macho Man? Or some other random wrestler that you really liked back in the day. Hey, where's Mick Foley? Where is he? He's not in the game. Let's go through a quick checklist of what Legends of WrestleMania has and doesn't have. Does it have Macho Man Randy Savage? No. Does it have Shawn Michaels' mullet? Yeah. What about Dusty Rhodes' birthmark? Yeah, it sure does. There's a lot of attention to detail in this game, and I think some big-time wrestling fans will appreciate it. For the rest of you, some of it just may go completely missed. Now, I'll leave it up to you guys to debate who should be in the game and who shouldn't, but I will say that it's just kind of weird to see somebody that's memorable, like the Honky Tonk Man, in the game, who's a debatable legend, but to leave out people like, you know, the Macho Man, it seems a little odd. But you have to keep in mind, too, that this is Legends of WrestleMania and not just, you know, Legends of Wrestling. So there's a lot of old classic wrestlers that would be perfect for a game like this, except they never wrestled at a WrestleMania. They're a notable omission as well. Also not present in the game are any women. There are no women in the game. You'd think they would have thrown in Luna Vachon or somebody at least, but nope, no women at all. I'll leave it to you guys to debate about the roster. One of the things that has to be talked about when talking about Legends of WrestleMania are the controls. It's hard to say that they're bad because they're fairly responsive. Even that's not great, but they are very different from what you're used to if you've played through the SmackDown vs. Raw series. If you remember the original SmackDown series that was on PlayStation 1, That's exactly what this game plays like. It's very arcade, and there's a very limited move set. There's a lot of punches and kicks, and not a lot of wrestling, which is kind of disappointing when you consider you've got a game that has some of the best wrestlers that ever wrestled, and they're just punching and kicking each other. It's really disappointing when you see someone like Bret Hart, who's forgotten more moves than most wrestlers will ever know, and then you see him do 4 or 5 moves repeatedly and just punch and kick the whole match. It leaves a little to be desired there. For players who are familiar with the newer wrestling games, the gameplay feels repetitive because you start spamming the same moves over and over, and it feels like a cheap win. And it's not that you're spamming the same moves over and over just for the cheap win, it's that you only have so many moves, and it gets repetitive after a while. It's not like you're trying to be cheap, it just is kind of cheap that you can't vary your moves very much. Also, with this limited move set, there are some things that have been stripped out of the game, like you're not going to be fighting in the audience areas or any places like that. You're going to be fighting almost entirely in the ring, and when it does leave the ring, you're not going to get a whole lot in the way of weapons or things like that. You've got a chair that can be pulled out from underneath the ring, but if you're playing as the Honky Tonk Man, you can forget about taking that guitar and going El Kabong on somebody's head, because it's not going to happen in this game. Even though the controls are very basic and there's a limited arsenal of moves, the limited arsenal of moves does make the game more accessible for the average gamer, the casual gamer, and the gamer that hasn't watched wrestling or played a wrestling game since 1995. I'm sure you've noticed by now that this game looks an awful lot like the SmackDown vs. Raw games, and they've used the same engine. And of course they made a lot of tweaks to the controls, but there were some things that they brought over from SmackDown vs. Raw that's worth noting, including the Create a Superstar mode. It's copied verbatim. It is the exact same, so that's not a bad thing when you consider that it's very robust. It's one of the best created character of any video game that's out there. You can create just about anybody, and it's as in-depth as you care to get. Also, you can import the roster from SmackDown vs. Raw 2009 using the save file on your hard drive. Now, I know that seems like a weird feature, but there's something very cathartic about stomping the snot out of Rey Mysterio with Andre the Giant. So that's also worth noting. Final verdict on this game is rent it. If you're a casual fan of wrestling or just a casual gamer, you can beat this game in a weekend. It's not difficult. But a few of the more difficult goals you may still have to work towards if you're one of those completionists or like gamer score whores. The nostalgia factor is what takes this game from mediocre to good, but it's not enough to take it from good to great. If you own any wrestling DVDs or have driven more than 100 miles to a WWE show, go ahead and buy this game. For fans of the SmackDown vs. Raw series, the controls are going to take some getting used to, so a rental is in order to decide on a purchase. I cannot recommend this game for everybody. It's a definite rental. Final verdict's rent it. The Warp Zone is presented by The Amplifier. For local music, arts, and more, check out The Amplifier online or at a newsstand today, www.amplifier.bgdailynews.com. That's it for this edition of The Warp Zone. I'm Mellow Joe, and I'll see you next time.